What's up, my comic comrades? One of my favorite episode types are the alternate version episodes, where we take a character and look at several of the alternate versions of that character that have been introduced over the years. And with Thor in the spotlight right now for Marvel Comics, it's time we give him some alternate versions love. Now, since it's been a while, let me lay down the groundwork for how we do this. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to mention every single alternate version of Thor ever published, but we're going to hit a good number of them, especially the coolest or most notable ones. With that said, let's get into it. Like all alternate versions episodes, we have to start off with the main version of the character we're talking about that all the other alternate versions are based off of, and that would be the main Marvel 616, Thor. This is the Thor we all know and love who co-founded the Avengers back in 1963. He's the son of Odin and possesses the mighty Mjolnir, which in turn gives him the power of Thor. This same Thor has recently just become the All-Father of Asgard and been imbued with the power cosmic by Galactus, becoming his Herald of Thunder. If you haven't been reading the brand new Thor title by Donny Cates, you need to get on that. It's only 3 issues in at the time of shooting this episode, and some crazy stuff has already happened. In any case, that's the main Thor that everyone pretty much already knows about. So now let's dive into some different versions. First up, we have Ultimate Thor, or Earth 1610 Thor. In this universe, Thor was exiled and believed to be a normal human. Having no memory of this, he's a psychiatric nurse named Thorleif Gullman. But on his 30th birthday, he suffered a nervous breakdown and started having delusions of Asgard. But as we know, they weren't delusions. He was starting to slowly remember who he really was. Long story short, the Dome, which was located in Brussels, were trying to recreate the super soldier serum that created Captain America, but they just couldn't figure out how. So instead, they decided to make a biomechanical harness and power belt that gave the wearer the abilities of super strength, flight, and limited invulnerability. Thorleif was then selected to be the test subject as he was built like a god since, well, he is a god. And during the testing process, he started ranting about how he believed he was a god, so he was institutionalized. During this time, they made some upgrades to the harness belt and hammer, like adding weather control and teleportation to it and making the hammer its power source. Ultimately, Thor remembered everything and stole the harness and hammer, vowing to use it to protect Midgard. Next up, we have Earth 295 Thor, or Age of Apocalypse Thor. On this Earth, Donald Blake, aka Thor, was vacationing in Norway when Apocalypse conquered America. This prevented him from ever finding the hammer Mjolnir as he did in the main continuity of Earth 616. Instead, he finds the exchange student Gwen Stacy, and since the two weren't able to return back to the US, they participated in relief efforts for Africa. At some point, he came into conflict with Mikhail Rasputin, the older brother of Colossus and Magic, and then ended up sacrificing himself by throwing him and Mikhail out a window in order to kill Mikhail in X-Universe issue 2. Moving along, we have Throg. Now, even though in the 80s, the main Marvel Universe Thor spent 3 days transformed into a frog, becoming the Frog of Thunder under the pen of Walter Simonson, that's not the frog I'm talking about here. Throg is a completely different character who is named Simon Walterson, named after the writer who created him, Walter Simonson. Anyway, Simon was cursed by a mystic after his wife died and turned into a frog, at which point he eventually comes into possession of a sliver of Mjolnir that one of Thor's goats broke off, because this takes place during the time the actual Thor was turned into a frog, which I mentioned a bit ago, who had a chariot pulled by 2 goats. Yes, a frog, the chariot, pulled by not 1, but 2 goats. In any case, Simon the Frog, who now went by the name of Puddlegulp, yes, Puddlegulp, I can't make this stuff up, was deemed worthy of lifting said sliver of Mjolnir so that he could fight off evil rats, at which point turned him into the Frog of Thunder, Throg. Now wielding the mighty Frognir, I think that's how you say it, I'm not exactly sure, as the sliver from Mjolnir turned into a mini hammer, inscription and all. Somehow, just somehow, Marvel found a way to make a character a little weirder than a talking tree that only says, I am Groot. The next Thor up is Zombie Thor from the popular Marvel Zombies title and or Earth 2149 Thor. In this universe, the superhero population was infected with a virus that turned them all into flesh-eating zombies, and clearly Thor was no exception. In fact, he was one of the first ones to attack and try to infect the Silver Surfer by flying up to him and smashing Mjolnir over Surfer's head, shattering his hammer in the process, but also knocking Surfer off his board so that the other infected heroes could dogpile him and tear him apart. I've said it plenty of times in the past, but if you haven't read the original Marvel Zombie series by Robert Kirkman, you need to get on that. It's super fun, and if you love zombies or horror, you're gonna love it. Continuing down the list, we also have Mangaverse Thor. Mangaverse Thor is very similar to the 616 Thor, but besides the obvious visual differences. In this reality, Baron von Strucker summoned ruler of the Dark Dimension Dormammu to Earth, so Doctor Strange summoned Thor from the ethereal beyond to help defeat Dormammu, at which point the combined might of the Eye of Agamotto and Mjolnir was able to do so. Moving along, we have Noir Thor. What's funny about this is that Thor doesn't actually appear in the Noir Comics universe, but also he sorta does, hence me mentioning it. You see, in Iron Man Noir issue 3, the Noir version of Baron Zemo says that his castle was previously inhabited by a madman who believed he were a Norse god on Earth. The madman had no guns but would frequently attack people with a hammer. Zemo says this as he's holding up a skull that has gold long hair and a helmet that looks just like the main Thor's helmet from the 616 continuity. Coincidence? I think not. Next up, we have Cancerverse Thor. Now, if you don't know what the Cancerverse is, it's an alternate reality where death was defeated and nothing ever dies, and instead becomes corrupted. This was all put into motion by Mar-Vell and the Many-Angled Ones, who are a race of eldritch abominations that live in the spaces between realities. So unlike the 616 universe, Mar-Vell didn't die from cancer and instead became Lord Mar-Vell, saved by the Many-Angled Ones. They granted him new powers, so Mar-Vell transmutated his friends and allies into hideous perversions of their other parallel reality selves, creating the Revengers. And on this team was of course Thor. This evil, hideous version of Thor was killed off along with his fellow Revengers by Thanos, who restored death to the Cancerverse. However, Thor and a few others were brought back to life and possessed by the Many-Angled Ones, before Nova ultimately defeated them all using the Cosmic Cube. Moving along once more, we have Thur. You heard me right, Thur. Putting it simply, this is a dog version of Thor from the same universe as Spider-Ham. He first appeared in Peter Porker the Spectacular Spider-Ham issue 5. What I'm saying is, this is no weirder than a pig version of Spider-Man. Instead of being from Asgard, he's from Arfgard. You get it? Arf, because he's a dog. Never mind. Next up, we have Dargo Ktor. Dargo is from a future that is ruled by corporations. But after people found Thor's hammer Mjolnir embedded in a rock, some of the population grew hope and formed the Cult of the Hammer, as they believed that one of them might prove worthy to lift the hammer from the rock and gain the power of Thor, which is very reminiscent of Excalibur. Long story short, when Dargo is protecting a woman from one of Loki's monsters, he says, "Can't fight them with my bare hands. I need a weapon." So he instinctively reaches for Mjolnir, which is right next to him and stuck in a rock, and wouldn't you know it, he was deemed worthy to lift it and now possesses the power of Thor. And he quite frankly looks like a member from an 80s rock band. Now, in every alternate version episode, I have to make it a point to put an Amalgam version character in the episode because, quite frankly, I love the Amalgamverse, as I think it's a fascinating concept to take a Marvel character and a DC character, then merge them together to create a completely new one. And in this case, we have Thor-Ryan, who's an amalgamation of Thor and Orion. Putting it simply, Thor-Ryan was the son of Thanoside, an amalgamation of Thanos and Darkseid, but he was traded to All-High Father Odin in order to seal a truce between the realms of Apocalypse and New Asgard. And he is now the wielder of the Astro Force and the protector of New Asgard. Do you see what I'm saying? It's just fun to see what aspects of each character they keep to form a new one. Like New Asgard, that's amazing, or High Father Odin, so good. But what's even cooler is this book was drawn by John Romita Jr. But there you have it, Thor-Ryan the Hunter, or Thor-Ryan of the New Asgards. Now, of course, we couldn't do an alternate versions of Thor episode without mentioning Beta Ray Bill. And funny enough, he's in the same continuity as the main Thor, which is because he's become a superhero in his own right. I mean, Bill was the first character outside of Thor and Odin to lift Mjolnir, which he did during his first confrontation with Thor. Thor dropped his stick, which was Mjolnir in disguise, and Beta Ray Bill was able to pick it up and now possess the power of Thor. Long story short, Odin made Thor and Beta Ray Bill fight in Skartheim for the right to wield Mjolnir and possess the power of Thor. Beta Ray Bill won the fight but refused to kill Thor. While healing, Beta tells Odin, "Though I have won this battle, is my claim to the hammer's powers established forever, or only until myself meet some stronger challenger?" In the end, Odin makes a new hammer, one specifically for Beta Ray Bill, which of course is Stormbreaker. And the last version of Thor I'm gonna mention is of course Jane Foster Thor. The short of it is, when Thor becomes unworthy to wield Mjolnir, Jane Foster, who had breast cancer at the time, was able to lift Mjolnir, becoming the Goddess of Thunder. At which point she would be Thor during the all-new, all-different Marvel era, before ultimately convincing Odin's son to reclaim his mantle of Thor and her becoming Valkyrie. But there you have it, friends, the alternate versions of Thor, at least a good amount of them. But let us know what your favorite alternate versions are in the comment section down below. First up for the 26th, we have Falcon and Winter Soldier issue 1. an office of dead government agents, a gifted new killer, and 2 ex-Captain Americas. When a dramatic attempt on the life of Bucky Barnes reunites him with Sam Wilson, the 2 old friends are plunged into a race to uncover the new leader of Hydra. Now we have giant-sized X-Men Jean Grey and Emma Frost issue 1. When Storm is in danger, it's going to take 2 of the most powerful telepaths on Earth working together to make things right. Jean Grey and Emma Frost. Here we have Batman Superman issue 7. In the aftermath of the Infected, Batman and Superman create new measures to prevent hidden and dangerous supervillain plots in the future. And finally we have Hell Arisen issue 3. Apex Lex's first run-in with the Infected didn't go as planned, and the Batman Who Laughs influence is continuing to spread. This issue is also the first full appearance of Joker's new girlfriend, Punchline. And that's going to bring another episode of Variants to a close, but if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to check out this one to my left right here, and if you like the channel, be sure to subscribe and like, it helps us out. But I'll see you guys next time when I talk about all things comics.